how do you think that the risk can be addressed technologically?
I think a lot of open source models, which even have one line of defense, that line of defense can easily be stripped away with some fine tuning to engage in more bad behavior.
Is some sort of a rational regulation from governments needed?
The question becomes, how do you do it in a way which actually serves your end goal and does not just hinder AI progress? One of the larger problems, I suppose, that comes here is the relatively global nature of this.
Now we are moving to the end of the conversation. Obviously, the reason I'm doing this with you is both of us are Indian and we are living in different countries, but we are both Indians and we're both very passionate about India. So I'm going to ask you this question, that how, as somebody who's a very successful Indian origin entrepreneur who's built a unicorn in the AI space, you are very well qualified to answer this question. So I'm going to put it to you. What do you think of the direction in which and opportunities in which Indian AI industry is? Do you see it being dominated by big tech, or do you see a lot of startups becoming as big as you guys have, and as it has happened with many others in the valley? And what are some of the opportunities? For example, can Indian AI startups, do some hacks to be extra successful? Because obviously they operate with certain limitations. They don't have any domestic models. A couple of Indian players are talking about developing LLMs in India, but it's still not the same way where it is, right? I mean, you have so many options here. So where does the Indian market go? Do you think that India meaning Indian companies, should focus on developing their own LLMs, or should they leverage the technology already? Sometimes they say, right, you stand on other people's shoulders and you can still stand very tall. So which is the approach that Indian startups should take? And do you think that Indian startups have always been accused of creating a lot of value, but through services and not through products? So do you think AI has the ability to kind of help Indian startups leapfrog and say that, they can actually become very, very focused on and successful at products because of agentic AI, which is now available? So I'd love to get your views on that. And lastly, as a follow-up, I'd also ask that, one of the growth metrics that is being, talked about a lot is that today we are a 4 trillion economy, and we are fourth largest economy in the world. We'll soon be the third. And the goal is to be 10 trillion by 2032. Now, obviously there are different views on whether we'll get there or not. But assuming that we do, or even if we don't get to 10 trillion by 2032, if we miss it by a year or two, that doesn't matter. But do you see AI as a big sort of a catalyst or steroid in that process?
Okay, let me answer the last question first.
Sure.
I expect AI to play a significant role. How significant is difficult to say. I do think when it comes to raising a country's GDP, the blocker may well become a lot of other old school things. The nature of the infrastructure, the rules around capital investments and so on. I'm not much of an expert, but I don't know if you've been reading what Kanwal Rekhe has been writing, and a lot of others have been, about how some changes in rules have made it harder to invest in India and so on. Probably all things equal, those are not a good thing. I imagine some of those rules came in to prevent money laundering, but have done some collateral damage in the process, possibly. So I very much think an economy growing and so on is a lot more to do with classic Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, or Lee Kuan Yew style principles, and I'm sure that will play a much bigger role compared to what AI plays. But yes, AI could absolutely play a meaningful role there. Now, in terms of the types of companies you were talking about, so one thing I feel very confident about is, there's two kinds of AI companies that could be built. One is, let's say, the straight up foundation model companies or the infra companies in a way. Ultimately, I mean, there's enough of a debate even in the US regarding how many can actually survive. Most people believe it can't be more than a few.
Okay.
It is an interesting question whether India should take a crack at that, similar to say what DeepSeek has done there, and definitely a number of Chinese companies. I expect them to be good competitors in that space as well. It is an interesting question whether there should be one or two significant plays with a lot of capital and all that. But the vast majority of the good companies in the US, even including many of them that you hear about a lot, like the likes of Perplexity and so on, are very much focused on the end product and how to leverage some of the recent advances in AI properly to build a valuable product. And this is something I absolutely expect will come out of a lot of Indian startups. I'm already seeing a number of them execute on this playbook quite well. In many ways, this is the logical next generation of the SaaS company even. Okay. Like in the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of Indian companies have successfully cracked the SaaS code of being able to sell into the US market or global markets, right. And, understanding that customer and so on. The next generation of SaaS definitely is the vertical SaaS agent. Mm-hmm. And yes, I absolutely believe a lot of good companies are going to be built on top of that. Many of them are already trained to have some of that B2B SaaS product chops as a result of the prior generation of SaaS companies, I think. Yeah, when it comes to this pure foundation model thing, it's an interesting question. Definitely will require a certain amount of risk capital. It will also probably depend a fair bit on are there specific individuals that have worked at some of these frontier labs, or do they end up going back to India and setting up shop, etc.? Sure. I mean, literally all you need is a handful of them. Correct. And many such people have certainly been I'm sure have had a good role to play in China's rise also in this particular space.
I'm sure they must have given them a good deal.
Right. So I mean, it is possible, but I have no doubt that on the second path there are going to be a lot of big wins. The first path. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yes, it would be nice to see, see a few big bets there, even if most of them will flame out, and one or two may still do well, which is exactly how the ecosystem in the Bay Area works as well. Sure. I mean, there were so many foundation model companies, more than half of them have folded.
That's the nature of the beast, right? Yeah. Especially when you're doing high risk development like that, there will be high burn as well.
Correct.
And but the ones that survive will change the world potentially.
Right. Yeah.
But so India, to our credit, or if I may say so, has done that on certain things like aerospace, for example. Mm-hmm. All its Moon mission and Mars mission, etc., have been done at a fraction of the cost.
Right, absolutely.
So, which is quite impressive.
Right.
Which is very similar to what China has done with the deep sea.
Correct.
So we can do it.
Yeah.
But somehow we have not invested in AI
right
the way we have invested in aerospace for some reason.
And there might be some nice stepping stones also into that. Like, for example, I've heard fairly good things about a couple of the Indian foundation model companies like Sarvam and so on, though I've not done a detailed evals very recently about how well they work for Indian languages.
Sure.
So, for example, fine-tuning these models to make them multilingual in the Indian languages can be a nice sort of a stepping stone. And after that, one can, decide whether you want to get into the game of making the model code better than the frontier models here, or making it do frontier math better and so on.
So in fact, I selectively invest in very few startups, and one of them that came to me, they have actually developed this AI-based voice solution. Mm-hmm. I was really one of the things that I was really impressed by was that they have solved for accent. So if you're calling an IVR, instead of talking to an agent, you're talking to a bot agent now, AI agent. And so they sound like, so if the call is from Delhi, then they speak in that Delhi accent and so on, right? So it's very good that way. So some of the Indian startups have done some good work as well. Mm-hmm. But it's obviously very, very early days still, I would say. I agree with you on that. Compared to what's going on here, we're still taking baby steps. But I think the government, that's my view as well, which I've been sort of communicating to government through various fora, is that we have to identify, just like we did with space, we have to identify AI as a top priority and The government has already started doing that, but we need to even have that, seeping into our funds, industries, investing in, those kind of things. But
I mean, generally, I'm much more of a free market guy on a lot of these things. My first place to look would be, are there any places where the government can get out of the way? Can anything be done to let capital flow at a much greater
instead
rate?
of trying to come in the way and help. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I actually agree. Even if the intent is great, sometimes what happens is, and that's the thing with India, right? Very often the intent is fantastic. But what happens is they don't understand what's going on. They want to help. So I've seen this happening in Singapore. Over the last 10 years or 15 years, they've been trying to build a startup ecosystem. And initially, it just wouldn't work. Why? Because they would say, I'm giving you this grant, I'm giving you that grant. India does the same thing. In India, each of these states have these underdeveloped areas, have these institutions which give grants, etc. And my point is, you can't build a startup culture by giving grants. You can give some grants, but if you don't have accountability and say that, I'll invest, but you got to achieve this, and then I'll invest. That is what brings the hunger in entrepreneurship. So I agree with you. Government steps out of the way and facilitates it. Do you see that, as a big concern in terms of how you as investors look at VCs, etc.?
Again, I've heard this like second-hand, third-hand, and things like that, right? So I do not know what are the exact barriers to capital flow and things like that. Again, some of the stuff I don't even understand very well because I have not been personally involved in this. Like I've heard talk about there was a Mauritius route to do investments in India, which has got closed, and that's whatever.
Mauritius and Singapore both were closed. It's a tax issue basically because unlike the US, India levies taxes on foreigners for capital gains from Indian companies. So if you invest in an Indian company and sell, you pay tax. But this used to not be the case if you were structured through Mauritius or Singapore because they had a tax treaty with them, which is now done away with. So I think that's what.
Yeah, like the US, for example, has this concept of this QSBS. Such things could be valuable there as well in terms of sweetening it and sweetening startup-related investment, perhaps.
I think so. Yeah, I think the good part is that I think we are today, in a situation where the government wants to do it, and they just need to ensure that the enforcement percolates all the way down. Sometimes it doesn't translate. The government may say we'll support startups, and then the tax department issues a notice to startups. That is kind of, speaking two different languages. So the government is definitely very, very, the Prime Minister has said in multiple fora that he's very keen to promote startups, and he's announced all this Startup India scheme and all that. But when it comes to implementing it, some of the arms are still very bureaucratic. Some of them are a little difficult. So I think that's what India, needs to do better. Definitely. Okay. So great. This has been a very, very fascinating conversation. Certainly for me, I learned a lot as a non-techie who's interested in AI. I learned a lot about how it is playing out here, especially your journey, because I find that these personalized experiences to understand the broader ecosystem is very helpful. I always find that extremely invaluable, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is I talk to people who are doing things which are different from what we're doing, and their perspectives are always gold for me and to our audience. So thank you very much, Vijay, for being with us today, and thank you for making it as a guest for the Uncluttered Views first Silicon Valley based episode, and thank you for accepting it at short notice, and I hope that we will see you a lot more often in India. But I really keenly look forward to watching Turing's further journey. I want to see, you guys becoming much, much more valuable, becoming public. So all the best with all that. I think even though you're valued at, almost $2.5 billion, this is just the beginning, right? In many ways.
Yeah. There's a lot of exciting work ahead to do.
Yes, and industry-wide as well. So all the best with that, and thank you again. And if if we can, talk about anything in India in terms of what we can do from a policy perspective, those are suggestions we can, put together.
Sure. I mean, I probably have other friends that are smarter on this on these subjects than I am.
Because we keep doing that a lot.
Right.
It's not like we are, trying to give suggestions that are not welcome, but we obviously the suggestions are a lot more welcome if people who are actually dealing with those talk about it, as opposed to coming from industry professionals like us who are advisors.
Right.
So thank you again, and thank you all for watching this wonderful episode.